Fifth grade, I wanted you to keep coiling the bottom until it reaches about 4 inches. Now I could probably go around one more time, but I'm going to show you a demonstration of how to make the walls of your basket start going up. Okay, so just to remind you, to add new string, you're taking the tail of the new thread or yarn and matching it with the tail of the last bits that you had left and wrapping it. And I wrapped already 4 times, so I'm just going to do 4 more times and then I'm going to stitch it. Now when I stitch it, it's going to be a little bit different than when I was just doing the inside. So I'm going to thread my needle. Remember, pinch, put it over, pull through, and when you pull, make sure everything's nice and tight. I always hold this to this. You're always stitching it to the row directly in front. Pulling and gathering. That will keep you from getting tangled up. Pull really tight when you get a stitch. Now, when I want the walls to go up, I'm not going to pull the stitch, the row right here. I am going to put the row on top, okay? And you're stitching directly to the row below, okay? When you pull the stitch on top and tug, it'll stay. Now you're going to wrap and kind of slide in again. If these tails ever get in the way as you're wrapping, just trim them off. And then if you pull tight enough on your stitch, it'll stay put, and then you're going to wrap again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Putting it on top of where I want it to be. I'm going to stitch to the row below, which at this point is the bottom. If you really want to lock it in place after you stitch to the row below, sometimes it seems like you have a knot, but you don't. You just have to untangle. You stitch to the row below, but if you really want it to stay put, you can go back in through the side in front of that stitch in between the rows and really pull tight. Then I'm going to stitch and wrap again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Put it on top of itself, stitch to the row below, pulling and gathering so it doesn't get tangled. Now my stitch is going to land directly across from where I left off, and then if you want to lock it in place even better, go back through the wall right in front of the stitch that you just made to come back out. And then gather all this up as you're doing that and then wrap some more, and it will really start going up the wall. So you can see now it's starting to lay on top of itself. Okay, down below, in through the side, gather, wrap. Put it on top, stitch below. The key to getting your rows and stitches, your rows to stay is to pull that stitch super tight. If you go in through the side and pull it tight again, it will stay. And then pull tight and then wrap right away. Stitch to the row below. Now my tail is there. You want to make sure the tail comes back out and give yourself a little bit of extra string. Feels like it's twisted on itself. Always stop and be patient and undo any knots that you have so you don't get frustrated later. Then I came through. I could wrap right away, but I want my first row to kind of stay put, so I'm going to stitch through the side and then wrap again. When you're wrapping and stitching, when you get to about right here where it's on, it's starting to move up, you are going to stitch to the row below. When you're wrapping and you're stitching, you're not going to stitch all the way to the bottom anymore. It's always going to be the one under it, and then under, and then under. So right now I'm stitching to the row below, which happens to be the bottom, but it's not always going to be. It's kind of like when we started out the beginning of our basket, how you always were stitching to the center hole and then eventually you weren't any longer. So make sure you are paying attention to that. And I will be walking around, floating from table to table. Remember, I will get to you. You can ask people at your table for help until I get there, and make sure you're not getting up and chasing me around the room. You know that I will come to you. Just be patient. All right, so that is how you start building up your basket walls. Stitch to the row below. To get it to lock into place, pull, stitch in front of that stitch, pull, and wrap.